Hello everybody and welcome back for layout number 10 here on the Long Island and Southern Railroad. I just want to apologize, it's been a while since my last layout update video. It's probably been close to 2.5 weeks now at this point, and as you can probably see, there's been a lot of work happening both on the layout and in the room itself. It was because of the work that happened on the room, the layout was actually disassembled into 3 pieces, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But now it's finally back together. Before I get into layout progress though, I just want to acknowledge a couple of things. First, I recently did a podcast with Sam over at Sam's Trains, where he interviewed both myself and Corey from Ours Trains. We had a real neat conversation about the history of model railroading and what we find fascinating about it. It was a great conversation. I highly suggest that you check out the podcast video and Sam and his channel. He has some great videos up on there. I'll leave a link to the podcast and his channel in the description below, so make sure to check those out. Secondly, before we get into layout progress itself, we're going to take a ride over to Nassau Hobby Center in Freeport, New York. I have to get a couple things for the layout that were screwed up during the tables being taken apart and put back together. Show you guys what I get. I'll show you guys around the store, and then once we get back, we'll put everything back together. I'll give you guys a full layout update. It's going to be a long one, so make sure to grab some popcorn and something to drink and enjoy the video. Thank you. So while I was at Nassau Hobby Center, I picked up a Lionel Fast Track 072 remote switch that was 50% off MSRP, so I got a great deal on this. A couple of more pieces of Fast Track to complete the loops, and one of the new Lionel Standard O boxcars. And I'm thinking about doing a review on this. But once I get all this out of the packaging, I will then continue the layout. Alright, now that I've got everything unboxed, the layout cleaned up, let's get started with layout update number 10. So the first biggest thing that you could probably tell is that the room is completed. For those of you who haven't watched my videos before, originally this room was just bare sheetrock and there was no ceiling or lights or anything. It was a plain room, and there was no floor, which has now been installed. But anyways, we got all that done, and in order to do that, we had to take apart the train tables. All my train stuff was dispersed throughout the basement, and it was a whole big mess, but finally we got the walls spackled, painted, and the ceiling in. Now the room had to match the rest of the basement, so when one day the house does sell, there isn't just one plain blue room in the middle of nowhere. So that's why the walls are painted brown. Now, as for the signs that you'll see around the layout, all of them are the same from my previous layout, except these two right here. These are from an actual Long Island Railroad station. My dad helped to tear down a station that they were renovating, and they let him keep these 2 signs for me. So I'm glad to finally get these hanging up. I have a third one that doesn't fit, and it needs to be fixed up a little. But once that is all fixed up, I'll hang that above the layout too. So, the other thing in the ceiling, originally I only had 1 light, but now I have 2 to better light the layout, which was a much needed thing. It was very dim in this room, and now I have perfect light above the layout. Moving down, the next biggest thing is that I painted a backdrop. All of this, all 25 feet of it, was hand painted by myself on 1-inch pieces of plywood. Now, originally I was thinking about purchasing backdrops from one of the many backdrop makers, but nothing really stood out to me, and they were quite expensive, so I just decided to go ahead and make my own. It took me over a course of about 2 to 3 days to paint all these. Now, they don't exactly line up in some places. Some seams are visible, which I'll have backdrop buildings, which I'll get to in a minute to cover some of those up. But I also have to go back and repaint some spots where the mountains don't line up between panels. But other than that, I'm extremely happy with it. And I'll get more into the details of the backdrop as we move along the layout. Now, as I do in most videos, I start with the left side of the layout and I work my way to the right. So first up here, you might be able to see that the ballast is messed up. So when the tables went back together, they didn't go back together as they were set before because of the backdrops and the floor being changed and whatnot. So I had to rip up all of the track on the layout and put it back down. So throughout the layout, you'll see ballast and bare plywood. It's gonna get fixed, hopefully very soon once I can get some more ballast. But all of the track came up and had to be put back down. It was something that needed to be done. If you go back in a lot of my other videos, you'll see the track isn't straight or there are gaps in between pieces of track, and being able to go through and rip up all the track and put it back down again was much needed for the performance of the layout. So as you can see in the back corner here is especially bad moving the tracks, and that's something that's definitely going to need to be worked on in the near future. Now up along the backdrop in the back, I have these 4 background buildings. These are from railroadbackdrops.com. I got these off of his eBay store. I'll have a link to his website and his eBay store in the description, but I found these to be a cheaper alternative to some of the other ones that are on the market. And so I just picked them up to see what they looked like, and I'm very happy with them. They're very realistic. I just have them leaning up against the backdrop. For now, they aren't glued in. I'm not exactly sure what order they're in. I'm waiting on one more backdrop from PGH Train Fanatic on YouTube, the apartment building that has a fire going on in it. Once I get that one, I'll see how all these fit and what order they look best in. But it gives the sense that there's more to the town than what's inside the tracks, you know, building that outside world. Now, originally, I did paint a road on the backdrop, back where the road crosses the track and there's a gap between the 2 buildings. But the way we put in the backdrops, the road is actually below the table level, so I have to go back there and repaint the road onto the backdrop, which isn't too difficult, but it's going to be tedious getting back on the table. But it'll help once again to, you know, there's a sense that there's something else beyond what's on the table. Moving into the town, as you may be able to see that some buildings were moved, more specifically Al's Hardware was moved a little bit to the right, and the church moved a little bit to the right as well. That was to help conform to the track moving about an inch closer for the clearance issues. The cross fell off the top of the church. I need to fix that, and I still need to find another building to go between the church and the townhouse. Now the townhouse isn't wired up yet. I'm planning on doing that in the future, but I just wanted to get the video out to you guys as soon as possible. So by the next layout update video, that should be all wired up. Now, as you can see, the fence here is toppled over, and just like the church cross and a lot of the other things that you'll see on the layout, a lot was broken off or damaged during, you know, moving around the tables. So eventually it'll all get fixed, but I just wanted to get the video up as soon as possible to you guys. And because of that, I haven't had time to glue all these things back into place, but no worries, by the next layout update video, this will all be fixed. The Bachman ice cream stand, which I believe I showed in my last layout update, but if I didn't, I bought this from Mario's Trains, and I had to install lights inside of it, so I used the Lionel peel and stick lights, and I'm planning on putting it here next to Piggly Wiggly. Now, originally I did have the rest of the grass mat here, but I tried to put in a gravel parking lot with Woodland Scenic's ballast, and it turned out horrendous. I had to cut up the grass mat. So I have other pieces of the grass mat that I'm going to put in here. I'm going to spray paint first to make it look like that there's a cement parking lot and a little picnic area. But that's going to be sitting there. I just need to cut out the grass mat, paint it up, wire it up, and then it'll be good as new. Moving up front to the layout, we have the Cherry Hill crossing shanty. Originally this sat on the other side of the passenger station, but I had to move it up front here because the different track plan shortened the straightaway on the front of the table, which extended the passenger station further than what it originally did, and therefore this shanty had to be moved. And so I'm thinking about placing it here, but that is not final yet. Now for me, the biggest change is that although it's hard to tell with the passenger stations all crooked, but now these 2 tracks are perfectly parallel. I have some old videos of the trains running where you could tell that especially this front track, there was about a 2-inch difference from where it started, the straightaway started here, and where it ended over there, and it looked really bad on video. And when I pulled all the track up, I made sure that these two tracks were perfectly parallel, and now it's all good. Now, in order to do that, I had to add a couple small straight pieces here, 1 1/3 inches, 1 3/4, and another 1 1/3 inches. And so that shortens the length of the straightaway by about 3 inches down on the other end. And that moves the passenger station up just a little bit closer to the curve, which is what caused the crossing shanty to have to be moved. Now, moving ahead to the parking lot here, although there hasn't been any work done to it, the track has been moved about 2 inches closer to on top of the parking lot. So I'm probably going to have to repaint this and redo it because there's no way that a car would be able to span the about 4-foot gap in between the end of the parking space and the track. So this is going to have to get redone. I'm not too upset about this. I should have planned it, and I didn't like the way how I originally laid it out, so I guess it's more of a benefit that I'm able to redo this. Coming up to the yard section of the layout, as you saw, I picked up at Nassau Hobby Center, I got an 072Y switch. Now originally I had an 036 right-hand turnout here, and the tracks didn't line up perfectly. You need a 5 1/4 inch gap in between center rails, and the fast track switch made it like 5 3/4, which the tracks didn't fit together right. It looked really bad, and so I just decided to go ahead and buy the 072Y switch, and I'm really glad I made that decision. It looks a lot better now. Now I feel confident in ballasting it and finalizing it. Now I do have this 072Y switch all wired up. The controller is over here for it, just so it looks a lot nicer having the lantern lit and being able to have somewhat prototypical operations without needing the hand of God to change the way the switch points are set. Because I took out the 036 switch, I lost about 20 inches of straight section, so I moved my Lionel sanding tower up front here. I would probably put on a different logo than the Mets one, a Long Island Railroad logo. But yeah, this is my engine facility is pretty much complete. The only thing that I want to do is that the connection wires to make the 2 engine stalls block sections so I can park my conventional locomotives on the track, and especially since this inner loop of track is conventionally controlled, so I can use my conventionally controlled trains. I need those block sections, and the connections aren't the best. I have the connection wires. I picked those up a few days ago, so I just need to install them on the bottom of one of those straight track sections. But once I do that, this will all be completed and I can ballast it. Behind the engine service facility, I've had this Pennsylvania Lionel water tower for a while now. You've probably seen it in a lot of different locations in all my videos. But I installed those between the 2 main lines back there for no other reason than I wanted to have it on the layout. I couldn't really find a prototypical area for it. But my thinking is that since I had the Long Island Railroad water tower, the Pennsylvania Railroad was the majority stakeholder in the Long Island Railroad for 60-something years, and so there was a lot of Pennsylvania Railroad equipment used by the Long Island Railroad, and Sunnyside Yard, which is in Queens on Long Island, was owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad, so it wouldn't be too out of place to put a Pennsylvania Railroad water tower next to a Long Island Railroad water tower. Speaking of the Long Island Railroad water tower, originally it was in that back corner where the mountain now sits. That mountain originally used to be where the farm sat. But when I moved the mountain back in that corner, I've decided to move the water tower more into the yard area. So now it's in there, it's all wired. I started doing the ballast when the tables were separated because, genius me, I figured that, hey, the 2 tables are apart, so now it's going to be easier to get back there and ballast. Now, in hindsight, that was stupid because it turns out that I needed to take up all the track again and put it back down, ruining most of the ballast that I put down. But anyways, it is partially ballast back there, and I do need to go back there and fix it and lay down all new ballast. Hopefully that'll be done by the next layout update as well. And now lastly, moving to the front of the layout, I have my little farm scene here. You can tell how far the track came. So originally this inner loop was up against here like this, and this outer loop was pressed up against the ballast here. So it's probably shifted about 1 inch inwards for both loops of track. I do have to redo all this scenery. It is a pain, but it's going to lead to a lot smoother running of the trains. So there's nothing much more I can ask for. Originally, I painted a farm scene onto this portion of the backdrop, but just like the road, it's actually sitting below the tabletop level because of the way we screwed in the backdrop to the tables. Now, hindsight's always 20/20, but I'll probably leave this just the way it is, unlike painting the road onto the other portion of the backdrop. I do have one more new sign. I picked this railroad crossing sign up with my girlfriend down in Tennessee. So I have it hanging up, calling it on my Amtrak wall. I have the Amtrak 2020 wall poster along with the 2019-2020 cubicle calendars, an American Flyer tin poster, and a Lionel tin poster. Well, that about wraps it up for layout update number 10 here on the Long Island and Southern Railroad. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and comment below. We can talk trains. Make sure to stick around after I'm done talking to watch the trains run. It's going to be a little bit more than in my typical layout update videos, just so you get shots of all the new scenery. As always, take care and stay safe.